Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going deep today into a book that's been making waves, The Silent Crisis, Men's Rights in a Feminized World by Conrad Reicher.
Ooh, this one, yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, and I know a lot of you listening are already familiar with red pill ideas.
Right.
This book digs deep into that, especially those unspoken, overt contracts we all navigate in society.
Absolutely. Yeah, those unwritten rules that can really trip you up if you don't know they're there.
Exactly. And Reicher's argument is that these contracts have changed over time in ways that disadvantage men.
It's like a wake-up call, urging men to recognize those ways they might be getting the short end of the stick in today's world.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from controversy either. He goes right into sensitive topics like family law and divorce, the impact of feminism on everyday life, even the idea of male-only spaces. Get ready to rethink some assumptions, folks.
He definitely pushes those buttons. And one of the things I find so interesting is how he frames it all within a larger historical context. Like he goes all the way back to the roots of feminism.
Right. It's not just some angry rant. He tries to understand how we got here.
Exactly. And it's eye-opening to see how the goals of feminism have evolved over time, you know? You might be surprised to learn that even back in the 1800s, during the Seneca Falls Convention,
Oh, wow.
there were already calls for stricter divorce laws. Think about that.
Wow.
At that time, those laws already favored women.
I didn't know that.
So Riker uses this as an early example of how even back then the drive for equality could tip into an imbalance.
Is he implying there was like a hidden agenda?
Kind of, yeah. He suggests that it wasn't always just about equal rights, but also about shifting the power dynamic.
Interesting. And he brings this into the modern day, right?
Absolutely. He looks at the current debate about women in the draft,
Right.
and he points out that many of the people pushing to include women don't seem to be pushing to abolish the draft altogether.
Huh. Makes you think.
Yeah, it does. It raises the question, is the goal truly equality or something else entirely? Like, are we just adding women to the mix, or are we rethinking the whole system?
That's a good point. So what does this all mean for us today?
Well, Riker argues that this historical context is vital to understanding how we got to where we are now. He claims that the family court system, for example, is a prime example of how those early imbalances have become embedded in our institutions.
Yeah, I'm starting to see where he's going with this.
He doesn't mince words either. One of his most striking claims is that when it comes to divorce, 50% of the assets go to the woman and the other 50% go to the man. The man just doesn't know it yet.
Ouch. That's a harsh way to put it.
But he backs it up with some pretty alarming statistics.
Like what?
For instance, he cites a 2018 study from the University of California showing that men paying alimony are significantly more likely to experience depression.
Oh, wow.
And even suicidal thoughts.
That's heavy.
Yeah, it's not just about the finances either. Riker connects this to the societal expectations placed on men, being strong, the silent type, not showing vulnerability.
Right. Society tells men to just suck it up.
Exact. And he argues that this makes it even harder for men to cope with the emotional and financial fallout of divorce.
Okay, I can see how that would be a recipe for disaster.
It is, and it leads to one of his most controversial proposals, mandatory paternity testing.
Ooh, that's a hot button issue.
It is. Riker frames it as a way to protect men from false accusations and ensure fairness when it comes to child support.
I can see how some people would be against that.
Oh, absolutely. Critics might say it reflects a lack of trust in women.
Right.
But Riker turns that argument around. You know,
Right.
He asks if women have the right to establish paternity and seek child support, shouldn't men have the same right?
The right to confirm paternity and make sure they're not on the hook for a child that isn't theirs.
Exactly. He even shares this really powerful story from the book about a man named Shane.
Oh, what happened?
Shane was falsely accused of paternity.
Oh, no.
Thankfully, a DNA test cleared his name.
Wow, that's a close call.
Yeah, it saved him from years of financial burden and emotional turmoil.
Seriously makes you wonder how many other...
Signs are out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how many men are trapped in situations like that without even knowing it?
It raises some serious questions about the system, doesn't it?
Yeah, like how fair is it,
Yeah.
really? And is there potential for abuse?
Exactly. And it's not just about the legal and financial aspects either. Riker also delves into the profound emotional toll these situations can take on men.
Right.
He argues that men are facing a silent crisis when it comes to mental health.
You know, I think I've heard him talk about that before.
He points to the alarmingly high suicide rates among men,
It's true. It's a real problem.
particularly after divorce. And he talks about the lack of attention this issue receives compared to women's mental health.
Like it's not taken as seriously or something?
Yeah, and he argues that this silent crisis is rooted in those very societal expectations we talked about earlier. Those covert contracts that tell men to just bottle up their emotions.
Man up and deal with it on your own.
Exactly, and that can be incredibly damaging.
No doubt. And this ties into another one of Riker's thought-provoking concepts, the need for male spaces.
Yeah, he really goes there.
He suggests that these spaces are more vital than ever in a world that he sees as increasingly feminized. a world where traditional notions of masculinity are often demonized.
So much pressure on men to conform to a certain way of being.
Right. And he even grounds this argument in history and anthropology.
I love that he does his research.
Me too.
Yeah.
It shows he's not just making stuff up. He cites examples like Roman bathhouses and men's clubs, suggesting that these types of spaces have existed for centuries, serving a purpose that goes beyond simple socializing.
They provide a space for men to connect with each other on a deeper level, to process their emotions.
And to explore their masculinity in a healthy and supportive environment.
Free from the pressures and expectations of a mixed gender setting.
And he even critiques the push against male-only spaces, right?
Oh, yeah. He uses the Boy Scouts' decision to allow girls as a prime example of what he sees as a broader trend of erasing the boundaries between genders.
And he sees that as a bad thing.
He's not saying it's inherently bad, but he's questioning whether it's always a good thing to blur those lines.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. Do we need to reevaluate the role of male-only spaces? Could they be part of the solution to this silent crisis men are facing?
Those are really good questions. It's definitely something to think about.
And you know where Riker really gets fired up? The legal system, especially divorce and child custody. He argues that men need to be far more aware of their rights in these areas.
Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches there, does he? I mean, he straight up calls the divorce system a crime that doesn't pay for women.
Right. It's a bold statement. He's claiming it's designed to financially benefit women at men's expense.
So he's saying the system is biased against men.
Essentially, yeah. His argument is that alimony and child support laws are outdated, like relics of a time when women were financially dependent on men.
Okay, I can see that.
But today he argues they're often used punitively, even when women are perfectly capable of supporting themselves.
So he's saying it's not about fairness anymore. It's about punishment.
That's his take. He even cites studies showing this stark contrast after divorce.
What kind of contrast?
Men's standard of living often plummets, while women's actually increases.
Really? Wow.
It's pretty striking. And he goes even further, suggesting that benefits for single mothers should be reconsidered.
Whoa, now that's controversial.
It is. He argues that the current system unintentionally encourages single motherhood.
How so?
Well, he even suggests that some women might exploit it for financial gain.
I can see how that could happen.
By removing those benefits, he believes society would incentivize two-parent households, which he sees as the ideal for raising children.
Okay, but what about the kids who are already in single-parent families?
Right.
Wouldn't that hurt them?
That's a valid concern. Critics would argue that it's not fair to punish children for their parents' choices,
Right.
and that it could lead to more families struggling financially.
So it's a complex issue with no easy answer.
Exactly. And that's Riker's point. He's trying to get us to think critically about these systems we've created.
Whether they're really serving everyone fairly.
Right, because sometimes our good intentions can have unintended consequences.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from other controversial topics either, like abortion.
Oh yeah, he goes there.
He argues that men should have a say in the decision.
Which is a pretty hot button issue.
Definitely. He frames it as a matter of basic fairness.
His reasoning is that if men are legally and financially responsible for a child, they should have a voice in whether that child is brought into the world.
Okay, I can see his point.
He feels the current system completely ignores the emotional and psychological impact abortion can have on men.
Like it's just assumed that it's only the woman's decision.
Right, and he argues that this essentially forces men into fatherhood against their will.
It's like their feelings and opinions don't matter.
That's how he sees it. He even goes so far as to call for a public day of mourning for aborted children.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is. He's arguing that their lives deserve to be acknowledged and their potential recognized.
So he's acknowledging the loss and the grief that men can feel in these situations.
Exactly. It's a deeply sensitive topic, and his stance is guaranteed to evoke strong reaction.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But what's important is that we approach this conversation with empathy and respect.
Right. We need to recognize the complexities and the valid concerns of everyone involved.
Exactly. It's not about taking sides. It's about understanding each other's perspective.
I think that's a good approach to any difficult conversation.
I agree. And Riker seems to be saying that open dialogue is essential, even when dealing with these sensitive and potentially divisive topics.
So he's not afraid to tackle the tough issues head on.
Not at all. He argues that silencing men, dismissing their concerns, or ignoring their experiences only makes the problems worse.
Like it just pushes those feelings underground.
Exactly. And he sees this as part of a larger pattern of what he calls the feminization of society.
Which he believes harms both men and women.
Right. It's not about men versus women. It's about finding a balance.
So what's his solution?
Well, he advocates for men to have spaces where they can speak freely, connect with each other, and explore their masculinity in a healthy and supportive way.
It's like those male spaces we talked about earlier.
Exactly. He believes men need places where they can be themselves, without judgment or the pressure to conform to certain societal expectations.
I think that makes sense. It's like women have their own spaces and support networks.
Right, and Riker is saying men need that too.
And this leads him to delve into the incel movement.
Which he sees as a symptom of this larger societal problem.
So he's not condoning their behavior, but he's trying to understand where it comes from.
Exactly. He explores the factors contributing to their anger and resentment.
Like what?
Well, he acknowledges the very real pressures men face around physical attractiveness in dating.
Yeah, that's a huge issue.
And the relentless drive to be successful.
Like, society tells men they have to be providers and achievers.
Right. And if they don't measure up, they can feel like failure.
So it's almost like he's saying these men are a product of the very system he's critiquing.
In a way, yeah. They're the ones who've fallen through the crack, the ones who haven't been able to adapt to the changing landscape of gender roles and expectations.
And the response is anger and resentment.
Unfortunately, yes. But it's important to note that Riker doesn't condone the violence or misogyny often associated with the incel movement.
Of course not. He's not saying that's okay.
He sees them as a cautionary tale, a group of men who've become so disillusioned and alienated that they've resorted to harmful and destructive behaviors.
It's a sad situation.
It is, and it highlights the importance of addressing these issues before they reach that point.
And he connects the incel movement to the broader red pill philosophy.
Which, as we discussed earlier, encourages men to see the world through a different lens, one that challenges traditional feminist narrative.
Right, like it's a way for men to make sense of their experiences in a world that often feels hostile or unfair.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the red pill movement is diverse.
Meaning?
Well, it encompasses a wide range of beliefs and viewpoints.
Right, not everyone who identifies as red pill agrees on everything.
Exactly. And while some aspects can be empowering, promoting self-improvement and questioning societal norms, others can be problematic.
Like what?
Fostering hostility towards women and reinforcing harmful stereotypes.
So it's a mixed bag.
It is, and it requires a discerning mind to navigate it.
It seems like Riker's trying to find a balance here.
He is. He acknowledges the legitimate concerns of men's rights activists, while also rejecting the more toxic and hateful elements of the movement.
So he's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly. He advocates for a nuanced approach, one that recognizes the complexity of gender relations.
And avoids those simplistic narratives of good guys and bad guys.
Right. He encourages us to move beyond blame and victimhood and focus on creating a more just and equitable world for everyone.
A world where everyone can thrive.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of his argument, the influence of what he calls cultural Marxism.
Oh, I've heard that term before.
It's a highly charged term, often used by conservative commentators to explain what they perceive as a decline in Western civilization.
Right. It's definitely a loaded term.
It is, and it's crucial to approach this concept critically. Well, it can be used as a blanket term to dismiss any challenge to traditional power structure.
So we need to be careful about how we use it.
Exact. But Riker seems to be using it to explain what he sees as a societal shift.
What kind of shift?
A shift where men are increasingly portrayed as incompetent, privileged, or even dangerous.
Like the bad guys.
In a way, yeah. And he believes this negative portrayal has a real impact on men's lives.
How so?
Well, it limits their opportunities and contributes to their mental health struggle.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he points to the media's role in shaping these perceptions.
Like how men are portrayed in movies and TV shows.
Right. He argues that men are often depicted as either bumbling fools in sitcoms or violent criminals in news reports.
Yeah, it's like they're either incompetent or dangerous.
Exactly. And rarely are they shown as complex, nuanced individuals.
Like real people with flaws and strengths.
Right. And he even argues that this negative portrayal influences policy decisions, leading to laws that disadvantage men, particularly in areas like family law and education, as we discussed earlier.
So he's saying it's not just about media representation, it's about how those representations shape our beliefs and our actions.
Exactly. And he cites affirmative action policies as an example.
Oh, interesting.
He argues that they sometimes lead to discrimination against men in the workplace,
How so?
with less qualified women being hired or promoted over more qualified men.
I can see how that could happen.
And he sees this as part of a larger trend of what he calls the feminization of society.
Which we talked about earlier.
Right. And he believes that this trend has gone too far.
Like the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way to rebalance the scale.
So it's not about going back to the old ways, it's about finding a new equilibrium.
Exactly. And he also believes that boys are being failed by the education system.
In what way?
Well, he sees it as having become feminized, prioritizing girls' needs and learning styles over boys.
And that's a problem.
He thinks so. He cites statistics showing that boys are more likely to be diagnosed with learning disabilities,
Oh, well.
to drop out of school, and to be less likely to attend college.
Those are pretty alarming statistics.
They are, and he attributes this partly to a decline in competition.
Like in school.
Yeah, and an overemphasis on collaboration in classrooms.
Which he argues doesn't cater to boys' natural tendency.
Right. He believes that boys thrive in environments that encourage competition and risk-taking.
And that those qualities are often stifled in today's schools.
Exactly. He also criticizes the lack of male role models in education.
Like male teachers.
Right. He points out that most teachers are women.
That's true.
And he argues that this can leave boys feeling alienated and uninspired.
Like they don't see themselves reflected in their teachers.
Exactly. He calls for a reevaluation of the education system, urging it to recognize and meet the unique needs of boys.
So it's not about favoring boys over girls. It's about creating a system that works for everyone.
Right. And that recognizes that boys and girls learn differently and have different needs.
That makes sense. So it's about tailoring the education system to those needs.
Exactly. And this brings him to a crucial point, the importance of fathers.
Oh.
Riker believes that men need to step up and be actively involved in their sons' lives.
Providing that guidance and support.
Exactly. And the love that boys need to thrive.
So it's not just about being a provider. It's about being emotionally present.
Right. It's about being a role model, a mentor, a source of strength and wisdom.
So he's saying that fatherhood is essential to a boy's development.
Absolutely. He sees it as a vital part of masculinity, a source of purpose and connection that's deeply fulfilling for men.
And he even argues that men need mentors themselves.
Older men who can guide them and help them navigate life's challenges.
Like having someone to look up to, someone who's been there and done that.
Exactly. And he laments the decline of traditional male mentorship programs like the Boy Scouts.
Saying it's left a void in young men's lives.
Right. He encourages men to find ways to mentor younger generations.
Whether it's through coaching, volunteering, or simply being a positive presence in their lives.
Exactly. It's about giving back, making a difference, ensuring those future generations of men have the tools and support they need.
So it's about paying it forward.
Exactly. It's about creating a legacy of strong, healthy masculinity.
And this brings us back to his idea of reclaiming masculinity.
Right, but not in that old school aggressive way.
It's more about tapping into the unique strengths and values that come with being a man.
Exactly. He talks about men as protectors, providers, and leaders.
But in a way that's balanced, compassionate, and respectful.
Right. It's a more nuanced and modern take on what it means to be a man in today's world.
So it's not about rejecting masculine, it's about redefining it.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between strength and sensitivity,
Between ambition and compassion.
between drive and support
It's about being the best men we can be.
for ourselves, our families, and the world around us.
It's not all doom and gloom, though, is it? I mean, Riker doesn't just leave us hanging with a list of problems. He offers solutions.
Right ways for men to take control and build a better future. It's hopeful.
So what's the first step? What can guys actually do?
Well, he really stresses that men need to take responsibility for their own well-being,
Okay, that makes sense.
both physically and mentally, prioritizing their health, seeking help when they need it.
Right, like therapy or counseling.
Exactly. And building strong support systems.
So surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah, friends, family mentor, guys who have your back.
He talks a lot about men connecting with each other, right?
He does, forming those deep bonds and communities where they can share their experiences and offer support.
Because guys don't always do that easily, do they?
No, not always. Society often discourages men from expressing their emotions or seeking help.
Like the whole man up mentality.
Exact. And Riker argues that that can be incredibly damaging. It bottles things up.
Yeah, it's like pressure cooker waiting to explode.
Exactly. So he's saying guys need to find healthy outlets for their emotions.
Supportive spaces where they can be themselves.
Absolutely. And he even suggests that men need to reclaim masculinity, but not in that old school aggressive way,
Right, not the toxic macho stuff.
Exact. It's more about tapping into the unique strengths and values that come with being a man.
So what does that look like?
He talks about men as protectors, providers, leaders.
Okay, those are pretty traditional roles.
They are, but he's framing them in a way that's balanced, passionate, respectful. It's a more nuanced and modern take on what it means to be a man in today's world.
So it's not about going back to the Stone Age. It's about evolving.
Exactly. It's about finding those role models who embody this healthy masculinity.
Like who?
Men who are strong yet sensitive, ambitious yet compassionate, driven yet supportive. Men who are breaking down those old stereotypes and redefining what it means to be a good man.
That's a tall order.
It is, but Riker believes it's possible, it's essential.
And he really emphasizes the importance of fatherhood, right?
He does. Being present and involved in their children's lives, providing that love, guidance, support that kids need to thrive.
It's not just about bringing home the bacon.
No, it's about so much more than that. It's about being emotionally present, being a role model, being there for your kids.
And he sees this as a fundamental part of a man's purpose.
Absolutely. A source of meaning and connection that brings real joy and fulfillment.
And he encourages men to become mentors themselves.
Yes, sharing their wisdom and experience with younger generations, guiding them on their path to becoming good men.
It's like paying it forward.
It's about creating a legacy of strong, healthy masculinity.
So what's the takeaway here? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think Riker's message is ultimately one of hope. He believes that men can create a better future for themselves and for future
And
generations.
it's not going to be easy, is it?
No, it's going to take work. It's going to take courage. It's going to take a willingness to challenge the status quo and to redefine what it means to be a man in the 21st century.
And it starts with each of us individually, right?
Exactly. It starts with taking responsibility for our own lives,
Yep.
for our own well-being, for the kind of men we want to be.
And for the kind of world we want to create.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that men's rights are human rights and that the fight for equality benefits everyone.
It's about building a world where both men and women can thrive.
Where differences are celebrated and where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential.
So if you're ready to join the conversation, learn more, be part of the solution, definitely check out The Silent Crisis, Men's Rights in a Feminized World by Conrad Riker.
You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books.
It's a book that will challenge you, make you think, and hopefully inspire you to take action.
It's a call to arms for men who are ready to step up and create a better world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep striving for a better world.